is that as you were talking, I think about, the relationship with our, identities, the way that we look, and even our ability to access capitalistic spaces,
Yes.
right? So even when you talk about like your mother and your mother saying like, here is, there's a fear.
Your
Yeah,
face is your
but
passport.
that is so
That was deep.
powerful, but
Yeah.
it's real, right? Because
Yeah.
I think about my grandmother, whenever she would see me on like an interview and I have on jeans or ripped jeans, like she'd have a heart attack.
Yeah.
She'd be like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? But it's based on a reality that, for a lot of folks in that generation, they weren't able to access spaces
Right.
if they didn't conform as
Right.
much as possible to Eurocentric standards of beauty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I want to share a little bit because
Okay.
you shared so much that was, first of all, inspiring, and it touched different parts of my own experience, which I really appreciate. So thank you for sharing so vulnerably and so honestly. I really, really appreciate it. And it got me thinking about my own experiences. I've been in mainly predominantly white spaces since middle school. I was a prep child.
Okay.
So I was in those spaces. I'm from East New York, Brooklyn.
Nice.
And I remember having to commute from East New York into Manhattan, going to an Upper East Side all-girls school, where the girls were predominantly white, predominantly blonde, predominantly straight hair. And I was coming from a Colombian family. My father is Afro-Latino. My mother is a white Latina.
Yeah.
And I remember at that point in my life, and this is like the 90s as well, I remember the only person that I had to look up to and say, oh, like this is someone that I can identify with, was Shakira.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I don't know if you remember Shakira back in the 90s, but she went from like having her curly black hair to dyeing it blonde and like straightening it more. And I remember for me, my experience was very much around assimilation.
Yes.
And like, how do I change my look in order to fit in these white spaces and to have access to that capital that comes with proximity to whiteness.
Right.
So I remember going through dyeing my hair, using keratin to like straighten it and all of that. And then when I got to college, I remember as an undergrad, I became more involved in Latino and multicultural groups. And for the first time, the conversation around hair came up, and I remember feeling a little bit of shame at the fact that I had been, dyeing and straightening my hair, and the curly hair movement had just started at that point. And I remember finally I felt like, okay, let me explore what this might feel like, and I did the big chop as well. And I remember coming home, and my father, who, like I said, he's Afro-Latino, my father was the first one who had a visceral response. And I remember feeling so heartbroken because he was like, why would you do that to your hair after all these years of like letting it grow out so long and like having the color right and everything? And for the first time I was like, he's seeing himself. And this is like an internalized oppression that's coming out from my family. And that's something that because like you said, the hair process for a lot of us, for all of us, is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. Some days it's great, there's a lot of love there, and some days it's a little bit of a struggle. And for me recently, it's been thinking about like what my hair represents like in the context of like family, community, what it means. My partner he's Nawat, which is an indigenous tribe, and he wears his hair long. And so what it means in the context of that relationship where we're braiding each other's hair and taking care of each other in that way. And then I think about what it means for these larger corporations. I think of like, not to, I'm not going to name names, but I think about the larger curly hair companies that are trying to sell us all of these products, and they're profiting off of this idea of selling us back self-care and self-love. And what does that mean?
What does that mean, right?
When we're spending, I was spending, and I'll be honest, I'll be vulnerable here too, I was spending over $200 on a haircut.
Wow.
And what does that mean? Do I really need to be spending that amount of money to feel beautiful and to correct something that was never wrong in the first place?
You hit it on the head.
So, with that, with just like percolating with all of those ideas, I'm curious about when you think about going out into the world and buying products, what you recommend, where do you look, who do you connect with? Because for me, I know that that's been a large part of it, is just finding community outside of my family, where again there was like that internalized oppression that we had to overcome. So connecting with friends and connecting with other curly hair people and natural hair people, and what does that look like?
Oh my goodness.
For you?
Yes. Okay. So it's interesting. In New York, there used to be a lot of natural hair events. I used to go to all of them, sometimes more than one in a day. And it was important for me to go to these things because, you know, we had a shared experience. We had a shared story. We had things in common, right? Here we are saying, you know, we accept ourselves. We love ourselves the way we are. You know, we're beautiful, and we wanted to learn from each other. So what products do you use, and what do you do, and da-da-da. You know, but for me, you know, like I said, going natural or returning back to my natural hair is really the term, returning, right? Because I was always natural. Was more of a spiritual, political, conscious decision, you know, in that I knew exactly why I was going natural. I knew that there was a lie that I believed, and I refused to be a part of that machine. I refused to give into it. I refused to buy into it, and I refused to perpetuate this ideal, right? And so a lot of people were on that page with me, though. I was a little surprised. I said, well, wait, what are we talking about here? Like, are we not talking about, like, you know, going against the man? Like, what's happening? So I got a little frustrated. I went to the events. I definitely went to the events, and I spoke to women. And, you know, I've come to learn that everybody comes to their moment on their own time, and it's fine, right? I always tell people it doesn't really matter how you wear your hair. My concern is why you're doing it. You know what I mean? Do you feel that your hair is not good enough? Because I feel like that's an issue, and I feel that it comes from somewhere. Let's explore it together. You know, I'm here about free. I want to free everybody. You know what I mean? So that's why I have these conversations. So as far as products go, I love Shea Moisture. Let me just say, I love Shea Moisture stuff. But I don't really get too deep into like products, right? To be honest, a little water and shea butter go a long way, or a little coconut oil. I can make it work.
Yeah, what are some natural things that, maybe that's a good segue, is like, what are some natural things that you'd recommend to people, you know, and not support the man, who now owns all, you know, the colored enterprises.
Yeah,
right?
there are some black-owned businesses, though, that are still making products that are 100%. Well, Carol's Daughter is not owned by Carol's Daughter anymore. It's been purchased. Yay, I know. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Yes, but she did start in Brooklyn in her kitchen selling. It's an amazing story. But Shea Moisture is not even 100% black owned either. But okay. There is Mayel Organics. That's 100% black owned. There's Oyen Handmade, which is 100% black owned. There is I can see Allocate Naturals, 100% black owned. There's a few. The Main Choice, 100% black owned. I'm sure there's more that I'm leaving out. But as far as like DIY stuff, like doing stuff yourself, I buy shea butter and I whip it. I whip shea butter. There's also whipped shea butter that you can buy. I found some amazing whipped shea butter in Ghana, by the way. It was amazing. That's where they get the shea. The companies that get shea butter usually get it from Ghana, like Shea Moisture and stuff like that. So I got it straight from the motherland. I was so happy about that. But coconut oil, a lot of people say they don't like coconut oil on their hair. I think it's fine. I use it all over. I use it as a moisturizer.
It's a miracle thing.
Yeah, I love coconut oil. I cook with it. I eat it. I'm like,
brush
coconut
your
oil.
teeth.
I can brush my teeth with it. Everything. Yes. So coconut oil, shea butter. I think that's pretty much it. And sometimes I make a cocktail. I'll take a spray bottle with some water. I'll put a little bit of conditioner, and whatever conditioner I have around. Put a little bit of oil in there, shake it up, spritz it. I'll twist my hair down or not. I really am low maintenance with my hair. A lot of people don't think that I am, but I am. I'll sleep just like this I will not do anything to it. I'll just wake up, shake it, put it in a bun, something. I just don't have a lot of time to fuss with my hair like that. I am thinking about locking.
Ooh,
I am thinking about locking my hair. It's a commitment. And you know, it's interesting. Like, I was just reading an article about a hairstylist in Mozambique who has, I think he has a salon or two, and he specializes in locks. And locks in Mozambique are looked down upon in 2020.
Absolutely.
Locks. In the motherland. Even in Jamaica.
Even in Jamaica, but people don't know that the original, so like, you know, dreadlocks comes from like the term dreadful. So people, you know, when folks started to come down from the hills, you know, they were, you know, that was the language. They looked dreadful because they didn't, you know, like again, fit the Eurocentric standards of beauty.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I still have a little bit of that in me too. Like I know that. I know there's a little bit of I don't know, you know, in there, and I'm still working on that. But I wanted to bring this conversation. I wanted to talk about the decolonizing of our minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that this is not our work solely. I don't think it's our work. I think white people need to decolonize their minds as well. You know what I mean? Because where did this idea come from? Why do we have to assimilate? Why do we feel like we have to assimilate? There's a power structure that we feel that we have to fit underneath. And it's not a coincidence that we all feel it. No matter where you're from in this world, there's a power dynamic that we're all working under, and we have to free ourselves. But then I think the onus is also on white people to really sit back and look within themselves and see how they are contributing to these problems and to heal their own trauma, to heal their own pain. I think that's how it's going to change.
Absolutely.
It's not. It can't just be on us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For folks that have power, right? So going back, and one of the things I talked to you about was just discrimination.
Yes.
You know, you spoke about this law, which I'd love for you to speak about real quick. We're almost out of time.
Oh my goodness.
So like we should kind of like hit on things.
Yes.
But I think about the piece, you know, like again, like for white folks that have power in institutions, right? Are you going to hire somebody that comes in that has natural hair? Are you going to hire someone that has like dreadlocks, right? Are you going to be able to see the person versus like the image that you have created as, you know, acceptable?
Yes. And it's an idea that they have about it, right? They think it's associated with negativity.
Absolutely. And that has been conditioned, right? Like this is again like no shame. I love the piece that you said that we all have to show up and do this work.
Yes.
But you know, there's no shame in the truth, right? Like these are things that have been like conditioned.
Yeah. And so shout out to the Joy Collective and Dove. They have created this law called the Crown Act. It has been passed in California, in New York, and New Jersey, and I believe Colorado is probably the next state that's going to pass it. But it's basically a law that prohibits discrimination based on hair texture in the workplace and in schools. And so, yes, in 2019 and 2020, we do need a law that protects Black people and people of African descent who have naturally textured hair, so that they're not fired or not kept away from economic opportunities, from being able to take care of their families, or you know, being taken out of school, or being forced not to graduate, or being forced not to compete in a wrestling competition because of their hair, because they have locks or braids or whatever that is rooted in our identity. Absolutely. You know what I mean? My hair right now my hair is like, our hair grows up. Our hair grows up towards the sun. I think that's the magic of our hair, right? And it's the magic of our hair. And so why should we not embrace it? Why should we be afraid of it, right? And so if there was a white woman standing next to me and her hair was down, it's the same hairstyle. It's just, it presents differently. If I had pigtails, it would be Afro puffs. It wouldn't be pigtails. You understand what I'm saying? It's the same style. It's just a different. It shows up differently, but it's the same. It's hair. It's made out of the same material as your hair is made out of. And so we need to have these open conversations with people so that we can expose the thought process behind why we think these things, you know? And it needs to be safe, because we don't want to have people recoil. We don't want to have people go back and be afraid of being, you know, yelled at or called racist or whatever. Like, let's put all that stuff aside and let's just really have a dialogue. Because conversation, I think, can change everything, and perspective can change things.
Absolutely.
You know
and
what I
knowing
mean?
how deep this is, right?
It's
These,
very
like,
deep.
I think the thing, I love what you just said, that there's no shame to this, right? These are things that have been conditioned for generations upon generations. Even if you think about, you know, like, I remember one of the few bits of, like, Black history you learned growing up in America, the first Black millionaire, right? Madam C.J. Walker. Right? And why? Because she created a product that would help you to assimilate greater to whiteness, right? And it's like so it's history, right?
It's history.
Being in West Africa, one of the things that I love that we talk about is this idea of Sankofa, like the bird looking back to really understand where we are and to understand where we're going.
Right.
We have to look back. We have to understand that these things aren't just because, right? Like, we're not oppressing our hearers, oppressing oppressing our hearers just because, especially you know, these are things that have been, like, conditioned through, like, white supremacy and ideas of beauty, and they have impact even outside of, like, you know, just our self-esteem, right? But they have impact in our ability to assess, like, have access, I should say, to white spaces, and this is a reality. Yeah, Black and, like, brown folks throughout the world are, like, struggling with assimilation, right? So maybe, what are some final thoughts for somebody that's watching this? This obviously has to be a larger conversation, and we'd love to have you back, and I think doing something in person, you know, with just, because there's so many things that are coming up. There's so many aspects of this that we didn't even touch on, right? I feel like we could just, like, stay here, right? But I mean, just maybe, what are some things that we would want to say to people to begin to engage? I love what you said, that, you know, like, we have to do these in ways that don't embarrass people. You know, I think that's a really important part. We have to do this in ways that, you know, think about, like, the history of these things, right? And the realities of these things. But we have to create space to have these conversations, right? Justice, you know, decolonization isn't just about, like, external things, right? They're also about, you know, as Angela Davis says, you know, like, it's not just, like, liberating society, it's liberating our minds, but liberating our constructs of, like, beauty and self, right? So maybe what are some final things that we'd want to say to someone who's, like, checking into this conversation?
I think I would say, really look inside of yourself and choose love, right? Because in this conversation, when we talk about race, there's a lot of trauma involved with that. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, a lot of things come up, right? And so I always say, when something comes up inside of you, that's the time for you to self-reflect and check, where is that coming from? And if anything is going to change, it starts with us. So if we're going to engage in a conversation about hair discrimination or anything, we have to really check where we're coming from. Are we coming from a place of love? Because if we are, then that means that we are open to the possibility. When we're coming from a place of fear, a place of pain, or a place from hurt, we're not really going to move forward. We're just going to get into an argument, or we're not even going to engage, right? So we have to be open. We have to be willing to engage in these tough conversations, but we have to really get our minds right before we enter the conversation. Because if you're there to be combative, we're not going anywhere with this. And so I really feel, like I said, I want to have these conversations. I want to bring white people into the conversation, because we're just preaching to the choir if we're not. Like, I know what the issues are, you know what the issues are, but nothing's going to change if we don't have that important conversation where we encourage everyone at the table to check themselves. You know what I mean? You have to, where are you coming from? And create that safe space where people can share honestly, openly, vulnerable, without feeling attacked. Because once you feel attacked, we're not going to make any progress. And I'm here for progress. I want us to be free. I want us to free ourselves from this conversation. I want us to free ourselves where we don't even have to think about hair. We don't have to think about how we wear our hair. It will just be normal. This is normal as just waking up today. Okay, what do I feel like doing today? You know what I mean? I want to be free.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to be free. I want everyone to be free. You know?
I mean, I think that's such a beautiful way to end this, right? Like,
Yeah.
till we all have the ability to self-actualize,
Yes.
there will always be some level of repression, right?
Mhm.
And I think about just something going back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's almost like we live in a world where there's all these different types of flowers,
Mhm.
right? And we've said, no, this is the only
Mm.
flower that
Right.
matters.
Right.
And as a result, we've stifled so much
Yeah.
beauty, right?
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I think honestly, like,
Yeah.
I just want to again say thank you. I think that the fact that you embody that self-love and that idea of liberation,
Mhm.
I think that's infectious. It's contagious. And honestly, like, I'm thinking about like what I would say as a closing note, and I think it's for all of us that are on these journeys to just like embody as much as possible, which you're doing so beautifully and wonderfully. So thank you, and keep going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you, guys.
Tasha. Peace.
Peace, guys. Thanks for having me. This is
Thank
awesome.
you. You're awesome.